It's Real Talk, Episode 7, the 2007 Western expansion. And I'm your host, Al the Movie Lion. On today's show, writer Joe Belcastro moseys on in to review 3:10 to Yuma. Jimmy the Toucan returns and flips a coin to score No Country for Old Men. And I'm so proud to welcome from Testify on Hulu, comedian Billy Wayne Davis to review the assassination of Jesse James. Now quick, leave a like, subscribe, and we'll shoot it out. Real Talk is powered by Real Digital. If you work for a brand or agency producing content, keep it real by setting up a consultation at www.realdigital.media to see how your next campaign can come in ahead of schedule and under budget. The following review is powered by the provocative and twisted mind of author Joe Belcastro. Dive into his imagination at joebelcastro.com. In 2007, cinema saw the release of modern classics like Zodiac, American Gangster, and Michael Clayton, as well as record-setting budgets being spent on the likes of Transformers, Spider-Man 3, and Pirates at World's End. So, it's easy to forget that 2007 was also the return of the American Western. There Will Be Blood, No Country for Old Men, and the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford were all released that year. But none of them truly revel in the genre's offerings quite like 3:10 to Yuma. James Mangold remakes the 1957 picture and doesn't concern himself with doing anything other than telling the most compelling story possible, with a tone that is completely appropriate. Russell Crowe is devastatingly charming and equally evil, but Christian Bale more than holds his own against the bandit in an understated performance that perfectly balances the duo. 3:10 to Yuma is straightforward, knows what it's trying to say, and is at all times easy to watch. So I'm very excited to hear what my good friend, writer Joe Belcastro, scored the film. Joe, how much would the government have to pay you for one of your legs?
Man, I would say a leg is pretty valuable. I mean, especially I'm a runner, so I would probably pay six figures.
Wow, okay. If anybody from the current administration is listening, let us know in the comments.
I'm gonna lose a leg, dude. They're all about money.
No, it's look. For anybody listening who has not seen 3:10 to Yuma, you will get that joke later. Potentially, we get into it. Regardless, Joe, I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for coming to the jungle, my friend. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for taking the train, I presume.
You kind of kept the jungle at what it should be, but you added some of your flair to it. So, Al, nice work. Very comfortable place to talk 3:10 to Yuma.
Well, this is your first time on the show, and we do things kind of a specific way. We talk about each film in 5 different categories. But for the listeners, I just want to peel back the curtain. Mr. Joe Belcastro, you were a film critic for a spell in the mid to late aughts, and potentially even longer. Did you see 3:10 to Yuma in cinema with the film critic hat on?
No, I'm glad you actually brought that up because this was 2007, I believe it was released.
Yes.
And I didn't start journalism film critic life until 2009. So
Oh, okay.
I just watched this for the first time recently.
Amazing. All right, so we're getting a fresh take. I love it. This is a remake. 1957 was the original Glenn Ford picture. So when we talk about the plot, there's maybe getting engraved on a little bit of a curve because we're obviously just remaking a plot. But I don't know. What were your thoughts on it?
Forget if it's a remake or not. I think people go in with this predisposition about Westerns. They always think like, oh, it's going to drag. It's going to be slow because of the time period. And I think you kind of hit it in your opening where they knew what they had. They knew what the story was really about. And especially at that time period, like you said, there's so many Westerns coming out. They had to make this sucker move. They didn't have time to for foreplay, right? We weren't going to, feel the inner thigh. We're just going to go. And that's what they did. And that's what I loved about it. Even though like they threw a lot of characters in the beginning, that's can be tricky, but for whatever reason, I processed them all right away. I'm like, we're just going with it, and I loved it. The pacing is one of the standout things in this story, and it just opens everything up and it just keeps you in there, and it can work now. We always say, oh, this song is timeless. I'm like, this could be one of those timeless movies where anybody could watch it wherever they are in life.
I'm curious because this movie unfortunately didn't do terribly well at the box office. It had an estimated budget of 55 million. It only brought in 53 million domestically, and worldwide it only has a reported earning of a little over 70 million. I mentioned earlier there's a lot of westerns that come out in 2007. Joe, do you think this movie performs better at the box office if it comes out a year later? Because this was released in September. So there is a world where you push it 6 months. And I mean, I don't know, does it benefit from these three other movies coming out in 2007? Or is it maybe worse timing to come out after all that?
So back then, like today, I think moviegoers are kind of hip to, hey, if a movie comes out in January, it's just the studios unloading the crap that they just felt
Right, right.
didn't work, right? And back, 2007, even though it's not terribly long ago, 70,000 or 70,000, 70 million worldwide for a Western in a crowded field, especially 2007 in general. So I don't know if it would have mattered. It's just, for those that don't know, like if you don't double your production budget at the box office,
It's
you have a
pretty.
chance to maybe get it on a streamer. Well, no, back then it was DVDs, but now it's tough. So it did actually perform pretty well, all things considered. It's just it was expensive to make and probably had a lot to do with the cast.
As is the requirement here, I've got to get a score for the plot. 1 out of 10. What would you give it, Joe?
You know what? I would go with a solid 7, maybe even a 7.5.
7.5 is acceptable. Should I lock that in?
I would lock that in. Yes.
All right, 7.5 is locked in. The characters and the performances in this movie, I think, are kind of they're a real treat. Maybe even to stand out. And what I think we've both established is a really solid film. Christian Bale's Dan Evans. I don't know. I feel like it is a really quiet role.
Yeah, look, he was probably wise enough to see Russell Crowe's role. As we said, we could get to that in a minute and hopefully keep it to a minute. He was such a over the top in all the right ways, like charismatic. So he was going to be the Flash of this movie. Not like the superhero Flash, but like the Flash,
The bang, the boom.
the boom, yeah, all that stuff, right? And you can't have another person who's capable of that in Christian Bale. They have to play kind of the heavy. They have to balance that out. And I think that's why it worked so well, and especially where this was going towards the end, because you need that dynamic between these two to really draw the audience in. So I think Christian Bale hit it. The one thing I kept thinking, though, I will admit, is 2007. I'm like, all right, so they probably shot this in 2005, 2006. And I think Batman Begins was like, so I was hearing Bruce Wayne
There's a
a
little
lot.
bit of yeah, especially when he gets like angry. Like there's a scene around the campfire.
Yeah,
Russell Crowe talks a little bit of smack about his wife, and yeah, that's Batman responding. I
yeah.
totally heard it.
I know. I was wondering, like, I'm like, maybe he's still in that character, and who knows when they were shooting The Dark Knight because it had to be kind of close to that time period as well. So, but yeah, sometimes I was like, oh, he just slipped into his Bruce Wayne.
So it happens. It's the superhero saturation is a real poison we can't escape in modern screenings. Ben Foster is gives a really great performance as Charlie Prince, who's sort of Russell Crowe's heavy, his right hand man. Really kind of menacing and wily, but also intelligent. Like it's just kind of never misses. And spoiler alert, it isn't Christian Bale who actually kills the Charlie Pierce character. It's or Prince. I'm sorry, I said Pierce, but it's Charlie Prince. But it's Ben Wade, Russell Crowe's character, that sort of disposes of his own crew. That's a
Well,
two
we're
part
just we're
question.
just giving away spoilers here, aren't we?
This
We're
is
just
what we
gonna.
look. Hey, it did come out close
When
to.
I was a reviewer, I would jump over, like, bend myself in ways to make sure I don't spoil anything. But like, all right, I get it. It's
We had
80
look.
years.
I appreciate it, Joe. To be fair, movie came out almost 20 years ago and was a remake of a movie from 1957.
Al, were you that person in the classroom who, like, would rate you, like, would just spoil anything you could for any kid's birthday party or anything like that? I mean,
Never. No, Al is all about preserving what makes this film great.
but yes, Ben Foster. So if you've seen a lot of these movies, and that's the thing, like you always, especially as for us, like we've seen a lot of movies, right? And so the pattern, I think that's why my plot score is maybe not as high as some people might think, even though I gush over this movie. But like it's a pattern I've seen before, and that means there's characters you've seen before. That being said, you're right. Ben Foster usually like his character arc is kind of obvious, but the way he got there was a little different. There's some nuances that you didn't see, and he is more ruthless, and you can almost see him like they position him well where he could go a different route if they wanted to and surprise you. But anytime he's on the screen, you're like, something's gonna happen, something like it's gonna be uncomfortable, but you're there for it. And that's why he worked. And again, it's all about balance with this cast. And they were wise to kind of separate the way they told the story, to separate Ben Foster from Russell Crowe for a lot of it.
Well, and when you talk about balance, I think what I really appreciated so much is, Christian Bale is a father. He's Dan Evans. His son is William Evans, played by Logan Lerman. So there's this father-son sort of relationship. Christian Bale very much embodies this. I've got to do it because it's the right thing to do, not because it makes sense. So does Charlie Prince. Ben Foster is effectively Russell Crowe's son. There's this father-son relationship that's mirrored between the two of them, and what Christian Bale is doing to get Ben Wade on the train is mirrored perfectly in what Ben Foster is doing to not get Ben Wade on the train. And I just feel like there's this between the four of them, it's kind of this amazing way. Any way you spin it, it gets more and more interesting. However, whatever two characters you land on between those four, if that all makes sense.
Yeah, that's a testament not only to the actors realizing that, but that just means the script they read was so clear,
Right.
right? And they just knew their lane. Kudos to the director. I mean, he put the blocking in, he knew where to place the pieces, and they just all, keyword again, they balanced each other out, and it made for an enjoyable ride.
That's right. Well, I got to get a score from you, but feel free if again there's a take or anything you want to throw in there about Russell Crowe before I get a score, because we are being very cheeky perhaps in not mentioning what is the standout performance of the movie.
It might be, and this isn't hyperbole, like it might be one of his best performances. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Like that, I won't say that lightly. Like he was just on it, and he makes it movie. He can make that movie work even if he didn't have the talented cast around him. Put it that way.
I
Uh,
completely agree. What Jeff Bridges does for Rooster Cogburn in the Coen Brothers remake of True Grit, I think Russell Crowe sort of perfectly does in the remake of 3:10 to Yuma, in that he
yep.
reinvents the character, and it's still a standout performance in a career of standout performances. So, that being said, Joe, what would you give it? 1 out of 10.
I mean, there's a lot of other people we didn't talk about in
It's true.
this
It's
movie
very
too.
true.
So I'm gonna give it a 9.
Locking in a 9. Quick shout out to Alan Tudyk, who plays a veterinarian, who's then on the crew as a doctor. Dallas Roberts plays the sort of railroad manager who's sort of funding this expedition they're on. But yeah, tons of great performances in this movie.
Hmm.
Visual storytelling is the next category. This is a pretty good looking movie. It's a Western. Obviously, it's got to have some visual tropes in there. But this, the director of photography has quite the interesting resume. Some of his titles include Cool Runnings, Walk the Line, and Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny, another James Mangold joint. That is, by the way, Fadon Papa Michelle?
I'm glad you went with that because I would
Look,
well, I mean, Papa Michelle, yeah. Fadon, I would go with
yeah,
Fadon.
Fadon Papa Michelle. All right, wait. Well, I'll link his IMDb in the show description, everybody. You decide. Leave us a comment if I butchered his name. But what did you think about the visual storytelling here, Joe?
So this movie has a good amount of action for a Western, which I know people like, oh, it's a Western. Everyone thinks it's just gunslinging. Not necessarily. That's not how all the Westerns go. Look at Unforgiven. There's like maybe 2 action scenes total now.
Yeah.
3 hour movie, right? It's still an amazing movie. But what I love is he places a camera somewhere and he just lets it go. He doesn't he was there's a time frame again, the 2007 time frame of like the shaky camera crap. Greengrass, I believe his name was for all the
Yeah.
Born Identity movies, right? He ushered that in. For some people, some reason people liked it. Oh, we're right in it. I think it makes you nauseous. And also for the time period, these guys aren't doing these crazy spy type secret agent flips and John Wick acrobatics and crap like that.
Yeah.
They're cowboys shooting guns, hiding behind things, maybe having a rifle, getting on rooftops. And he just sets the camera up, he lets the thing happen, and then he moves on. he probably came from the school of Deakins, where, the greatest cinematographer of our lifetime, maybe even ever. I feel like that guy kind of mimicked some of that, and of course, it just worked with this type of material.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Roger Deakins busy shooting No Country for Old Men, which was also released in 2007. But yeah, I completely agree. I think that the kind of cinematic approach to this visually and in the edit was like is just very classical filmmaking, which is super appropriate for a remake of a classic film for a kind of a timeless genre like the Western. Um, yeah, I completely agree. I think that there's also just sort of a pace that's set. And I bring up the pace now because I do kind of believe that edit sort of falls under the visual storytelling because we're juxtaposing these images, right? It's a
Yeah.
movie, it's moving images. There's a scene where the good guys have sort of a fake Ben Wade, a faux Ben Wade. They put in this, my God, Joe, what do you even call it? A wagon. Thank you, everyone, for your help there. And they eventually the bandits find the wagon. They realize it's not Ben Wade, and they effectively light it on fire while there's someone inside it. The way that scene plays out, there's just a pace to it that is it really enhances the cruelty of it because the bandits are just casually having a conversation about what to do as there's a man burning alive behind him. And the sound design, again, you can flip a coin if you like it or not. You don't really hear him screaming or anything, but that scene ends with just the entire wagon up in flames behind them, and you know that there's this man inside.
There was a trend was just about to start. Again, we keep bringing up this time period, but I think it was very paradigm shift in like around 2007, 2008, 2009 with movies. Christopher Nolan, the director of, as we mentioned, Batman Begins, he started bringing this realism to it, and not just with the story and the characters, but how you shot it. And he understood like, all right, even though I'm doing like a superhero movie, everything doesn't have to be shot like a superhero movie.
Right.
And that's what they found here. Like, so like you're talking about like the wagon scene with the burning, with the whole ruse being going on there with Ben Wade. I feel like they all just sat there like, all right, what would really happen? Like
Right.
this, like they're gonna talk about this just like they were. They're not gonna be like this intense, like hulking
Right.
up type thing and like breaking down, like, okay, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. Like, no, like it was kind of an everyday thing, violence. So I think that they're just very wise to keep that simple
Hmm.
and not overthink it and not make it more dramatic just to have like a wow from the audience.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's very authentic. It just feels honest. It doesn't feel. At no point are you distracted by the sensationalism of the edit or the cinematography. You're only ever focused on the sensationalism of the story. Visual storytelling, Joe. What would you give it?
I would go with 8.
All right, it's locked in. That brings us to use of sound. Where does a movie like 310 to Yuma fall in your sort of spectrum of quality of use of sound?
So, I think when you make these period pieces, if a filmmaker is wise enough to be like, all right, there's been some that have taken something that took place in like there's a movie called like the out of
Oh, A Knight's
1998.
Tale. A Knight's
Knight's Tale, thank you.
Yes, yes.
Like you get it. It was a cool little gimmick, but it's like, all right, it doesn't add to it. It just is
Right.
like, all right, you guys are doing this. It's somewhat funny, maybe. So the score didn't really stand out to me because it was just a subtle layer. I don't know, maybe that because I was just more drawn into the performances and what was happening visually. I didn't really pay attention to the sound in terms of there's other movies like we will talk about, and I'll be like, this is where it nailed it. But this was just like a subtle layer. It's like a bass player in a band. They're very understated, but if you don't have it,
Right.
that's like you're going to lose the fullness of the product, so to speak. And I think that's what the sound did for this movie. It was just there. It was supportive. It didn't let you fall off. It amped up just enough, but it's still on the chaos of like what you want to hear the gunshots. You want to hear the horses clomping around, right?
Right.
And so I don't think it was noticeable, but that's not a bad thing. It just didn't want to get in the way of what you needed to project out.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it just kind of it
Stop
all.
agreeing with me.
All right, I don't agree at all. The movie totally
This is not going to get any ratings. We got to go back and forth.
Don't worry, Joe. We'll bring you back some other time. We'll get into plenty of arguments, I'm sure. I dropped the ball by having you come on first and review a really fun, straightforward, good movie. We needed something more controversial. That's the problem. It is straightforward, but it's always supporting. It's always enhancing, is what I'm trying to say. It's enhancing the tension. It's enhancing the charm of the characters. It's enhancing the atmosphere. So I really agree, and I think that it's easy to get carried away with sound design. There's a really phenomenal
Yes.
movie a lot of people are probably familiar with called The Revenant. We're going to get into that in this season of the show. I actually docked the sound design in that movie a little bit because I felt like they got carried away at some points. Like some of the arrow hits and things were just so squishy and wet. And it felt like the Foley team was having a little too much fun. But in this movie, everything seems really appropriate. The
Mhm.
gunshots will kind of startle you at different times. But yeah, nothing seems too carried away. 1 out of 10. What do you give it, Joe?
It's a solid seven. I mean, it's not going to really, like you said, it just was supportive. It enhanced when it had to. So nothing wrong with a seven in this case.
Nothing wrong with a 7 at all. That moves us on to the final category of theme. We've talked about how straightforward this movie is. I think that it is, like all Westerns, or all good Westerns, I should say, really presents sort of a morality play. This one is right on the nose in terms of the morals of the characters, but I think it does a great job of discussing them.
I'm glad you phrased it that way, morality of it. You could have had somebody find redemption. And they found a way to maybe do it, but they still kept true to their own character of who they are.
Right.
And that's a tough balance. That's what you kind of think about. Like the theme of it is like you have always had this set of standards and morals that you're going like this, and then you get into this situation and like, will this change you? And are you open-minded to accept change from something that you have despised?
Right.
And that is the battle that both Ben Wade, Russell Crowe's character, and Dan Evans, Christian Bale's character, are guiding us through. And it's almost like the devil on your shoulder and the angel on the other shoulder. Which one are you kind of cheering for? Because I think that's flip-flops a lot. So the theme is there. That's a good thing in a movie where it's considered an action movie.
Totally agree.
And so it doesn't, there's plenty of action movies that just don't have any theme. They're just freaking action porn. This was not. This made you think, and it gave you they gave you time to think about that theme. I think that's the only theme. I mean, I know there's a kind of an underlying one with Logan Lerman, who's Dan Evans' son, who doesn't necessarily agree with his father, and you're wondering how that's going to play out, and that's interesting to watch because you don't know how that's going to end up.
Right.
So I guess that's like the subtle second theme going on. But yeah, other than that, it's just two things you can focus on, and they do a good job bringing you to a satisfying conclusion. I didn't say like, oh, they should have done this. Like that's not how this would happen. Like, no, this is a realistic, plausible way how this um confrontation or conundrum would end up.
You mentioned the sort of juxtaposition between Russell Crowe and Christian Bale and how they kind of learn from each other, but they don't want to. I think just as important to that is Ben Wade's consistent usage of scripture and talking about the Bible, and clearly is not necessarily the best representation of what a good Christian man would be doing. But I really love it in the end that he has drawn on a page of the Bible a picture of Dan Evans, Christian Bale. And to me, what that really symbolized was him finally seeing that he needed to take this lifetime of preaching, so to speak, and actually do it, actually put it into use, because Christian Bale is this living embodiment of this biblical character, of this person who's doing right for because they know what's right. And I really interpreted him drawing Christian Bale on a page of the Bible, and then Logan finding that drawing being the moment where I think he does decide, I'm going to go save my dad. I'm going to do what's right. And I don't know. I thought that was all. The themes were symbolized visually really kind of beautifully in that third act. And I just wanted, the last thing I want to say is, you mentioned this. It could just sort of be action porn. It could just be an action movie, but it's not. It's smarter than that. It doesn't have a ton of themes, but it's aware of its theme and it navigates that really well. And unfortunately, you don't get that in a lot of action movies.
who we all know people that have like, a father that is not getting along with his son. And there's variations of that, but that still exists today. Didn't just exist back in the Old West. The theme's not gonna wow you. It's not gonna be like open up your eyes, but it's something that needs to be reinforced. So I'll give it another 7.
7, locking it in. All right, Joe. Well, that means we have all of your totals, or we have all of your scores, which means we have a total. You gave the plot a 7.5. You gave the characters and performances a 9. You gave the visual storytelling an 8, the use of sound a 7, and the theme a 7. That's a total of 77. Are you happy with that score, Joe? Do you feel like that's appropriate? And it
No, if
designated.
it's out of if it's out of 100, it should be an 80.
Okay, and
Yeah,
I'll bump.
we have to have like an extra credit scene where they got 3 points somewhere. Uh,
Copy that. A 3 point grading on a curve. So does that mean again? So do you give it an A, a B? We kind of do things in chunks of 20 here. So if it's an 80, that would be an A. Depending on your alma mater, you might not have got an A for an 80, but
I never saw an A in my life.
yeah,
I will go with for me, I would say take the numbers out of it. I would say B plus.
B plus. Okay.
Yeah.
Now that that is all locked in, we've got an 80, a B plus from Joe. I gave the plot an 8.5 to your 7.5. Not much of a difference. I gave the characters and performances a 9 to your 9. I gave the visual storytelling an 8.5 to your 8. I gave the use of sound a 7 to your 7. And I gave the themes an 8 to your 7, making you very happy with the theme of agreeing continually. So I gave it an 82. Which for
All
me,
right.
I gave it an A minus. So an A minus to your B plus, an
I'm
82 to
borrowing your
your
two
80.
points. Yeah, thanks. I'm taking your 2 from your 82. We'll both be around 80.
We're pretty much in agreement here. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed talking to you about this movie. I'm curious, Joe, would you come back to the jungle sometime? You don't have to take a train next time. You can by any means if you want to come back.
Now I'd be happy to come back and bask in your glory of film knowledge and ambiance of jungle. Yes.
You're so kind. You're so kind, in fact, and I will use that opportunity to plug. Everybody should go check out joebelcastro.com because Joe is an amazing author in and of his own right. And I'm curious, we've got some spooky movies we're going to be talking about later in the season, and I know you've got a release coming out for a horror novel yourself. Maybe you can come back and help me review a horror flick.
Sounds like a match made in heaven, my friend. Match made in hell. Sorry, appropriate.
I was gonna say, yeah,
Yeah.
if we're plugging Joe's work, it would definitely be
Yeah.
a match made in hell. Well, thank you for coming on, my friend, and we'll see you next time. Platinum Plastic isn't just a proud sponsor of Real Talk. They're also the home for all our new designs and merchandise. Follow Platinum Plastic on Redbubble by clicking the link in the description and see all our A-plus gear. That's Platinum Plastic on Redbubble for all your Real Talk merch. In 2007, Ethan and Joel Coen did what few anticipated and released a film that was a departure from their style while simultaneously feeling completely appropriate for the auteurs. Confirming that, like their casting style, the Coens are character directors. No Country for Old Men does contain a few old men, and it's their lens we, the audience, examine Javier Bardem's Anton Chigurh through. The plot is masterfully designed to mirror violence itself, as we're always aware of what motivates the characters, but are equally aware of how unnecessary their actions are. Chigurh is one of cinema's greatest showcases of evil, and it's only when he comes face to face with Kelly Macdonald's Carla Jean that he's forced to hear that his rationalizations are forms of denial. Like all great villains, Chigurh operates by a code that allows him to easily make decisions others wouldn't consider, but in No Country, every character requires a bit of luck, and he's no different. The 11th film by the Coen Brothers is quietly a period film and comes with all the necessary tropes to solidify the movie as a contemporary Western. Like all Coen classics, there isn't a wasted performance in No Country, and the plot never stops unfolding until the end, which is perhaps the least predictable part of a film that's impossible to forecast. I'm very interested to hear what my old pal Jimmy the Toucan scored the film, as well as find out what's the most he's ever lost in a coin toss. Jimmy? Hello, Al. That's a very real question. I hate to put you on the spot, but I have an answer. I'm curious. What's the most you ever lost in a coin toss?
I don't think I've ever even done a coin toss, Al.
Wow. Do you have a coin on you now?
Well, what is the most you've ever lost in a coin toss, Al?
My virginity. Hey, I'm just kidding, everybody. Mascots are all asexual. We know that. Jimmy, seriously, I'm glad to have you here today. We're talking about an all-time classic, 2007's No Country for Old Men. As I mentioned in my intro, it's the 11th film by the Coen brothers. Uh, most would call it a masterpiece. Believe it or not, there are quite a few detractors out there. This is a very polarizing movie. This is a movie people seem to either love or really not be into at all. So, as always, we're going to run through 5 different categories to talk about the movie. We're going to start out by discussing the plot. I'd love to know, Jimmy, what do you think of the plot of No Country for Old Men?
Well, Al, I'd like to just start out and say that I very much am on the side of loving this movie a lot. In preparation for this discussion, um, I've I have uncovered some things that I very much love about this, and I've uncovered some things that um, I can that gives me pause. So
Interesting.
when I talk about the plot for this movie, I'm mostly thinking about the character perspective. I'm thinking about what satisfies me as an audience member. Now, I did see this movie in the theater the first weekend it came out, and I remember I loved the Coen brothers. I loved their movies. I loved Fargo. I love their movies, and this one very much has that a little bit more mature sensibility to it. Um, I think we would be remiss to talk about this film without talking about the source material, which is written by Cormac McCarthy. Um, I am a very big fan of his works and the films that were produced of his works. I am a huge fan of the American Western.
This is a showdown movie. Call it what it is.
It is, and there is grit, there is danger, there is violence, there is the unexpected. But I want to call attention to one thing that I will justify. I feel my scoring of the plot of this film, and here it is. You say that it's a showdown, that it's a confrontation between, good and bad. We have an example of a character, a sociopathic madman who, true to the form of the rules and conventions of storytelling that declare when you meet the villain, he must show you how dark and how villainous he can be. And he has this psychopathic look on his face when he brutally kills this police officer, and the scratches on the floor. And I think he's a true to form, very, very, very wonderful bad guy. And if you placed him in the westerns of old, he would certainly have the grit. Um, I want to call attention to one thing that I feel many people like about this movie that I very much felt was disrespectful, and I very much dislike about this, about my enjoyment of this thing, and it is the expectation that we will have an obligatory confrontation between Josh Brolin's character, who, for better or worse, is the guy that we root for in this thing. He's the hero, although an argument can be made that it is not his story that is being told. I'll
Sure.
get to that. But um, Josh Brolin's character, who we spend all this time with, um, we don't even we know that he suffers a grisly death at the hands of the Mexicans in this like ratty motel, and he isn't given a chance to have a showdown with Anton Chigurh. And he's the hero of the story, and we don't even see how he dies. For that, it loses steam with me. Now, again, I must say that I very much love this movie. So I gave the plot for No Country for Old Men a 9.
9. Fair enough. Yeah, I think that, if you're leaning on the title of the film to sort of help you maybe determine who the hero of the movie is, I think Josh Brolin would be your answer to that. I argue in many ways that the hero of the film is Tommy Lee Jones.
It's
I don't think that it is. I don't think Josh Brolin is the antithesis to Javier Bardem's character. I think that this is a movie about Chigurh and Tommy Lee Jones's character, and I think that that is supported by the last scene of the film and how everything is summarized. So, and I think that again, when I lean on the title of the picture, that's what makes Tommy Lee Jones the exception to what we see Josh Brolin to not be the exception to, which is that this is No Country for Old Men. So I definitely think that that is a fair grade. When we talk about the characters and the performances in this movie, obviously I mentioned Javier Bardem gives an all-time classic. I mean, just an amazing performance. When he kills people in this movie, it isn't that he does it without joy. He does it as if he just has to do it. And the way people just go to work and the way people take the subway train is the way he murders people. He does it for just as long as he has to. And it isn't always swift. It's always effective, but it's just he does it with almost a necessity that I think really scares the shit out of me and anybody else who would have to, playing a game of heads or tails with him.
I agree with that a lot. I think the characters and the performances are truly cinematic and authentic and relatable and dangerous. And I really enjoy the supporting people as well. The supporting actors, supporting
Oh
characters
yeah.
are really fantastic. To your point with Tommy Lee Jones, he does start the story with a voiceover telling us about how sheriffs in the old days wouldn't even carry a gun. There was a different kind of respect for the law and the lawman.
Mhm.
And times as this story unfolds have changed. Conflict between the old and the new. Um, I love how he mentions in that opening speech about how a man who was a criminal he put into the electric chair in Huntsville, Texas.
Mhm.
I have seen that electric chair, Old Sparky, which took like 380 lives. Okay. And it's
Jimmy's
just,
been around, ladies and
oh,
gentlemen.
yes,
He's been in more than
sir.
one jungle.
And it's what's fascinating with these incredible performances. There is never a moment of doubt that they are really they're
Oh
really these
yeah.
people.
And
Um,
in what they end up doing, all of the characters create this tapestry that you could almost lay out like a spectrum. And you have Anton is like a 10 out of 10. You have Carla Jean is like a 1. And then you have Tommy Lee Jones right smack dab in the middle as a 5. And all the other characters in the movie you can kind of sprinkle in at various parts on this sort of, whatever you want to call it, ethical spectrum. And also what I just need to point out that I love about Coen Brothers movies is all of their films they contain these characters that could only exist within that film. Other filmmakers, again, you could see the cast of She's Gotta Have It spilling over into Do the Right Thing. I don't think the characters in the Big Lebowski could live in No Country for Old Men. I don't think the gang from Raising Arizona wants to go through here. It's just these characters seem like they can only exist in this movie and only do exist in this movie, and that's what makes it feel so special. So,
yes, I give it a 10. I give it a 10 because I think uh, it is for all the reasons I just spoke. I think it is mastery of performance. I think it is absolute mastery of these really unique characters. I talked about Tommy Lee Jones. There's this great moment where Josh Brolin demonstrates his mastery and expertise as a hunter and a tracker by knowing that there would be the ultimo hombre. He opens up the truck door and there's a dying man asking for water, and he's like, "Where's the last guy? Where's the ultimo hombre?" Right?
Right.
I like the details, although he knows with his expertise as a master hunter and a tracker. He sees this dog. He comes upon the scene of the shootout. He finds the ultimo umbro. When he finds him, there's this great detail in the dead man's boots are all worn and have holes in them. At the same time, there are these great moments of acting and performance where, on the page, it would just say, the sheriff sits and thinks, right? There's this great moment when Tommy Lee Jones, after entering Llewellyn's little trailer, he sits and he opens up and pours a glass of milk, and looks at his reflection in the TV, and he's thinking. So I did. I gave the characters and performances a 10.
Well, and I just want to point out, so often today when I watch movies, I see that tension builds, tension builds, tension builds to a joke. And that the tension does not climax in a satisfying way, and instead humor is sort of delivered as this almost like make good. What I love about No Country for Old Men is that there's so much humor in it, in dark ways, just little ways. And I mean, Carla Jean's mother, I don't think there's a line that comes out of her mouth that doesn't make me laugh, from her referring to having the cancer. It's just, there are all these moments that in this very dark, heavy story that is cerebral, that you really have to be paying attention to really absorb all the parts of it. There are moments of levity. You are rewarded with consistent points of humor, and you bring that up a little bit with him kind of firing off at the Crow is maybe being just a moment to sort of ease tension a little bit. But even when he is involved in a car accident in the film, and these kids find him, and he's sort of like negotiating with the kids and stuff, it's just a very humorous. What I don't want to say the situation is humorous, because the situation isn't humorous, but it's there's humor in the tension. There's not humor as a way to resolve the tension, and I just think that that's worth pointing out because it really exists within the performance, which is something that the Coen brothers do masterfully. I mean,
Yeah.
that's you see it in Fargo, you see it in The Big Lebowski, you see it in all their films. So I want to talk about visual storytelling with you. Obviously, this is a really beautiful film. You mentioned it's a Western. It comes with all of the sort of visual um, stylings of a Western. This does take place in the 1980s, if I'm not mistaken, sort of the early to mid 80s. Um, and I don't know, it has a very distinct, very dry, sort of dehydrated look.
Well, Al, uh, Roger Deakins, the great Roger Deakins, is the cinematographer for this film, and um, what what is really important to understand about how this guy uses the language is that he uses the conventions and codes and the very lenses that Alfred Hitchcock used in his films. They've studied Hitchcock to the point where they know how to use that signature intensity and that of the master of suspense. There's a great sequence of suspense and intensity where uh, in the hotel room he has Josh Brolin has stashed the briefcase up in the air vent, and then gets rents the room opposite it so that he can pull it out the other way,
Mhm.
and he can hear the gunshots in the other room, and he's trying to pull it out with a coat hanger, on like duct tape to a stick.
Oh, I mean, how about when he's, been shot in the shoulder with a buckshot and is in the
Yes.
river, and the dog is hot on his tails, and you think naturally, oh, he's just gonna swim up the river, but no, he gets out of the river and has to clean out the gun and fix it, and it is not until the very last second that
Very
he
last second.
delivers the shot that he
Yeah.
can. And yeah,
I love the moment where he ejects the cartridge that's in the
blows
bullet,
on it
and then he blows
like
it
an
in.
old Nintendo game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's such a great film. What I want to point out and what I want to get your thoughts on really quickly before we move on, and you'll have to give me again your score for the visual storytelling. You
Mhm.
mentioned earlier that maybe you were a little unsatisfied with finding Josh Brolin. I want to not argue, but introduce the idea and get your response that by virtue of not getting the showdown or the climax or seeing him get killed, and by removing that from the audience, when you then find his corpse, I believe that to be far more upsetting and far more chilling and puts you in the position of Luann. And I think that again, for me, I very much stand by that the POV, the hero of the movie, is Tommy Lee Jones' character. For whatever part of the narrative um, that Brolin is burdening up until the point that he is killed, I believe Luann then takes on the burden from that point, and I think the audience switches. For us to see Brolin die would be from his point of view, and it would rob us of the emotional impact that we have when we are effectively finding him the way Luann is, and then picks up from that point on, kind of from her point of view, and spending time with her mother and Tommy Lee Jones. So I
Mhm.
offer that because that is, a choice of visual storytelling, and much like the decision when we get to the use of sound, this movie is more about a lack of sound. I just want to give you the opportunity to respond to something you brought up about the plot.
I know. I see what you mean. I totally see what you mean. I can't let go of the disappointment and the confusion that I feel every time I see the shot of him. And I mostly recognize him from his shirt. You don't even really see his
Fair
face.
enough. That I do agree that yeah, it is I do think if the point you're making is that that could be articulated a bit more that that's him, or I would agree, but I do feel like that disappointment you're talking about is exactly the intention. I think
Yeah,
you're
but I
supposed to
give
feel.
me what I want. I'm the audience. Give me what I want.
Mhm.
And I didn't get it, and I feel let down. I felt let down. And I get your point, and I it and it to be fair, uh, that is a that at the withholding of visual information, or the slice of information, it can be just as powerful. There is a slice of light that um, that cuts across Anton Sugar's face as he's waiting in the hotel room in the darkness, as Tommy Lee Jones approaches in the very hotel room that Josh Brolin was killed in, right? It is such an intense moment. And so I agree that the withholding of information can be very effective.
Well, and on
Um,
that note, then let's talk about the use of sound because this is a quiet movie. When we talk about just even other Coen Brothers movies, you bring up The Big Lebowski, there's going to be half a dozen songs that come to mind.
oh
Even if
yeah.
you bring up something like, I don't know,
Oh brother.
Oh, brother. I mean, my goodness, yeah, maybe there's no better example of that. But all of their films have very distinct soundtracks. When you think of No Country, I think you hear atmosphere. I don't know. I mean, the score that plays over the credits is great, but I don't remember it in the movie because again, this is such an intense film.
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about the use of sound in this movie, we're really talking again more about the absence of sound.
Yeah. Natural sound is a big portion of this. Now, here's my thing. I think that music is used to emphasize the emotional feelings that I should be having watching the thing. And I agree with you that it is ratcheted up to such a suspense and intensity through many of these moments that it's not necessary. But it's that very thing, um, that I find, although it's the lack of it, it also it could benefit from that. There
Interesting.
are
Okay.
there are moments like think about how Hitchcock punctuated his scenes with lush, important score, Bernard Herrmann score, right?
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know what this movie would be. Maybe it could be better with
Interesting.
a memorable score, and
Because I
because of that, because of that, it loses some steam with me.
okay. So what do you give it then? What do you give the You Citizen? One
I
out of
gave it
10.
a nine. I
You give
gave
it
it a
a
nine.
when we talk about the themes of this movie, again, this is a very thoughtful movie. This is a movie that is violent. It's hard to look at times, but like I said, it comes with a lot of laughs and humor.
Well, let me put it like this: if I were if if I were a guy telling you a story about this criminal enterprise, and I spun this yarn for you about how things used to be and about how things are now, and I told you about the blood and guts and the suspenseful moments with a big box full of cash and this stuff, um, I would I would punctuate all of that um, with uh, the the heat that it needs to like keep you connected and keep you guessing, um, and enjoying the thing. Tommy Lee Jones' opening statements um, about the how things were the old days. I think that it is really a story that he's telling about how the 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 contemporary morals have shifted,
Hmm.
and it um, it is played out with what ultimately is um, Llewellyn is Josh Brolin's moral code. His fatal flaw, and also kind of the inciting incident, they collide when his moral code forces him to get out of bed in the middle of the night to go bring water to that dying Mexican. As a result, his morality, his moral code, is a weakness in a immoral world.
Well, let me ask you, what do you give the theme out of 10 before I elaborate on my take on the theme?
I feel like it could have been reinforced in a way that made it clearer, clearer. I gave it a nine.
To me, the theme of the movie can be really summarized in one word, and I think that word is purpose. When you look at Llewellyn's character and what his purpose is, it is a bit clouded. You know, there are bits of ego in there. You could argue there's bits of greed on display. Whereas if again you look at a character like Tommy Lee Jones, his purpose seems to be very clearly to just sort of defend. Again, he is survived by this purpose of being the protector, not necessarily being the hero. You know, and when you look at Anton's arc and his purpose, it is again kind of clouded. Like he seems to have a great deal of focus. He seems to have one hell of a reputation. Um, but ultimately, his purpose is, I don't want to say it's senseless, but it ultimately can't be fulfilled. Anyway, I could go on and on through each character, but I felt like to me, it really is a story about purpose. I sort of agree that because of the structure of the film, because of what it ultimately is, you know, I often argue that for a theme to be sort of a 10 out of 10 that the picture needs to kind of be an example of that film, and because of the themes that this is traversing and the way they're doing it, I kind of think it disqualifies it. It can't really be an example of that. So for me, I gave it a 9.5. So for you gave the plot a 9, you gave the characters and performances a 10, the visual storytelling a 10, the use of sound a 9, the theme a 9. That brings it to a total of 94. That's an A in my book. Do you want to give it an A plus, Jimmy?
I give it an A.
I gave the plot a 10. Again, for me, I just felt like it never really stopped unfolding. It was really entertaining. It didn't drag. I mean, I think it's a plot that has iconic moments that people remember, multiple ones. So I don't know that you could do much better. I gave it a 10. Same with the characters and performances. I mean, for the Anton Chigurh performance alone, how do you not give the picture a 10. Right there with you on the visual storytelling, I gave it a 10. The use of sound, I did disagree with you a little bit. I will probably forever use No Country for Old Men as a great example of a movie that is quiet and benefits greatly from it. So I don't know that I agree that it might benefit from a score. So I gave it a 10, and like I said before, the theme was a 9.5. So that's a 99 from Al. So that's an A
That's
plus.
really good.
Yeah, if you couldn't tell, I liked it. Jimmy, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
If you haven't done so by now, I know you've been busy reviewing the film, but maybe you could leave a like. I'm going to go ahead and leave a like. Anybody who's listening, you should leave a like. You should also leave a comment and let us know what you thought about No Country for Old Men. Jimmy, I love you, buddy. I want to
Hey,
have you back. Will you come back and review
I
another?
will come back. I will fly all the way back.
Al is very lucky to have a pal like you, my friend. Before we jump into the next review, I just wanted to thank you for listening this far, and I ask that you please give us a follow if you're enjoying the show, as well as comment what movies you'd like to hear us score on Real Talk. We're almost certainly on your favorite social media platform, so search Al the Movie Lion wherever you scroll. The assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford hits on every trope the Western genre can offer, from train robberies to morality stretched thin enough to cover Missouri's vast plains, and a hauntingly natural voiceover by Hugh Ross. But said tropes are executed so masterfully, you might feel like you're experiencing them for the first time. Oh, the picture might also contain the most original take on a Mexican standoff in cinema history. A 43-year-old Brad Pitt injects understated wisdom and an explosive temper into the 34-year-old Jesse James, but the standout performance comes from Casey Affleck, who brings the coward Robert Ford to life with his signature blissful charm. This is a stellar cast, and the James gang alone has enough star power to rival a modern Avengers movie. At 2 hours and 40 minutes, this is a meticulous telling of an incredibly layered and twisted tale of worship, envy, and betrayal that ends exactly as advertised. The ever-evolving score reflects the sound of an adult lullaby and is a constant reminder that Robert Ford's motivations are founded in the nickel books he read about Jesse as a boy. I'm joined now by a man with a true appetite for greatness, and I couldn't be more honored to have him here in the jungle with me today. Mr. Billy Wayne Davis. Hey Billy, do you name your snakes before you eat them?
I don't think it's a good idea.
I'm a big burger guy, but I don't usually name them before eating them.
I don't know. No, you give something a personality, then you eat it. That's weird. There's some themes you should talk about with your therapist for sure if you need to put a personality behind what you're eating.
A lot of layers in that one little detail. I'm curious, was this your first time seeing the film for the show, or had you seen it before?
It was like 2007's when it came out, right?
Yep, that's right.
I remember watching it and thinking like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. Do you know when you watch something that's like way better than you think it's going to be and you're like, nope, can't digest this right now. I remember rewatching it for this and being like, I've seen parts of this before. And then being like, oh, I remember what happened where I thought it was going to be like a simple. And then you watch it and you're like, oh, this is like a masterpiece. So, nope.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because it comes out in 2007, which there's a ton of Westerns that come out that year. I mean, this whole episode is basically about that. I think this really kind of flies under the radar.
Well, No Country for Old Men's like one of my favorite movies. But rewatching this, it was like, I was like, oh, I'm going to have to rewatch this like a couple times because you're like, oh, this is like art.
And both movies shot by the great Roger Deakins. So fun connective tissue there. But we'll get more into that when we do visual storytelling. Billy, I know this is your first time on the show. We get into 5 different categories we'll talk about on the movie. The first one is plot. This is this is not a short movie. It's definitely, I think, again, it clocks in at about 2 hours and 40 minutes.
No, I'm aware. Yeah, I'm very aware of. It is. That would be my only critique. I do understand why it is so long. Like harsh critique. Everything else would be just be like, well, but like it's long.
Yeah. It's if you've got 3 hours to kill, it's probably a good thing to do. But it really does just take its time to tell, again, a story that hits on all the classical tropes of a Western. So I don't want to say it's predictable because it plays out in ways I don't think you could predict. But at the same time, there's a little bit of a like, hey, let's get on with it. I don't know. I felt that way a little bit while watching it.
Well, there is that Moby Dickness about it, which is part because they're also using this whole movie is using many, like you said, you mentioned the tropes, but also many storytelling devices, like layered upon layered. That's why I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to rewatch this a couple times. Like the way they use music and the way they just pull it back. You're like, oh, but it's also, I'm not saying cut it to 2 hours.
Sure.
I'm saying there's like probably 15 minutes that don't need to be in there. Not 40, but like 15. There's like a couple things where I'm like, I think you guys probably fell in love with these couple things because it was like fun and cool. And as a storyteller, I do understand not wanting to. Like, is it that important? You're like, I wish it. I know it's not, but in my heart it is. And right now I'm really attached to this. So we're going to add this 15 minutes. Everyone did a really good job on it. I do get that. It reminded me of like, oh, times were slow. So you can get oddly, I guess fascinated is the right word, with things.
You could really just sort of fixate on what
that's what dude did.
What I'm hearing, what you're saying, it establishes a pace that it keeps. You're a comedian, pacing is sort of everything, especially when you're doing maybe a longer set. And this movie is a long set. So I hear what you're saying where you don't want to change that too much because then you lose something. But at the same time, you do have to consider the overall experience. And yeah, I think 15 minutes would
There's a lot of time to overthink back then, too.
Sit around the campfire and consider.
But overthink with a lack of education, which is an interesting disposition.
Yeah, it's almost the opposite side of the spectrum of modern society where you have underthinking with overwhelming information sort of constantly being put in front of you. They're on the opposite end where they're overthinking with an extreme lack of information and a lack of access to information, more importantly to the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And then with the similar themes of fame and this idea of who someone is and then who they really, it's kind of Selena's situation too.
There you go. Yeah, there's a connection.
I just kept thinking that the whole time. I was like, I don't know why this keeps, but it is like, it's like your biggest fan is like, you're not who
Yeah, wow. No, that's a fascinating connection. I love that. Please let us know in the comments if there's any other Selena connections to the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford that we're missing. Billy, I got to get a grade out of you. 1 out of 10 for the plot specifically.
Probably 8. So this like a personal Jesse James antidote. I went to Western Kentucky University for 2 or 3 years. I don't remember before I quit. And there was this cave in town, and I'm sure people in the comments will be like, it's this the name of it? And sure, I forget the name of it. They throw parties down there. There used to be like a jazz club or some kind of stupid shit, before TV and all the fun stuff happened, when like people were kind of drunk all the time. They're like, let's do. And it's dangerous even now because it gets like wet because it's a cave. But Jesse James supposedly had to hide out there for like a bit, when he was doing his stuff. And I just remember thinking, it's not cool. That would suck to have to be like, this sucks. Even in those like early 20s, like college years when everything is like fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Even then I was like, the reality of that just sounds like you're stuck in this goddamn cave and everyone's looking for you.
Yeah, very different when you don't have recreational drugs or alcohol or a boombox and you're on the lam from.
Yeah, you're just like carrying this loot, but you're like kind of hiding too, and you're just like, "What'd you do?" And you're like, "I was in a cave for 3 days." And you're like,
Yeah.
"How was it?" You're like, "It sucked. It's a cave."
There's a reason we don't do that anymore.
And if I came out of it, people were gonna put me in jail or kill me. So I was like, "This is the life I'm living. Isn't it cool?" My name's alliteration. People love that.
We're talking a lot about Jesse James. The next category is characters and performances. What did you think of Brad Pitt's portrayal of Jesse James?
I think that motherfucker, if he's so handsome, it's a detriment. He's really good at acting.
I can confirm.
Like he's really, really good. Y'all got to give him like a legit tip of the hat eventually. I'd say he's like a Derek Jeter because it's like he's steady great. He doesn't fuck up a whole lot, and when he does, it's still kind of like, you get one every now and then, man. You're a fucking human. He humanized the lunatic, but lunatics are humans, which I think is like the mistake a lot of actors make. They become untethered with the lunacy. But
Mhm.
like it's like Heath Ledger is believable as the Joker because there's just like a part of him where you're like, seems like a real dude.
This humility that he kind of, I don't humility isn't the right word. There's almost like a burden that I feel like Brad Pitt brings to the character. He's almost over it. He kind of wishes he didn't have to do it anymore. And I think that bubbles up in this sort of temper that kind of just bubbles over at little points, which reminds you this is a really dangerous guy. But otherwise, yeah, he does seem like somebody of the entire gang, maybe the person you trust the most, maybe the person you want to spend the most time with.
Well, that's charisma. That's all that I mean, that is that like he's one of the few actors that can pull off that character. And Casey Affleck's amazing as the little Weasley fucker. He also is so good and charismatic, like Casey is, that you're just like they're not playing archetypes necessarily either, which is kind of what's fascinating. The Brad Pitt character to me is their Jesse James. It's like you said, they all kind of trust him, but there's also like they don't trust him. They all fear him.
Yeah, that's a good distinction to make.
He is disarming. To me, that part was fascinating because like anyone that I've met, it's just like a true criminal in their life. And you come across them in life if you're paying attention. There's like people are like, well, that's your line of work. And you're like, nah, it's any line of work from what I can tell is there's criminals in every, but the ones that are like proper criminals, they have a way of shifting the energy in a room that he nails.
Yeah.
Who's the director? Andrew Dominic. I love Killing Them Softly. I think it is the way they do violence in that movie is similar to this, so it makes sense. Where I talk about this sometimes, not on stage, but like with just in conversation with people, and most of the time, real violence is kind of quiet and quick, unsettling more than explosive, or do you know what I mean?
No, I do. It's
And they do that well in this, where with it, I mean, leading up when he shoots him, it's like that melodramatic music, and then boom, real life hits to where that no, there's no life in that man anymore. He is dead. He's on the floor. This is what happened, and then this is like a cold fucking weird. It's an insanely, it's wild because it's like how because of marketing and all the money and all that, where it's like something this wonderful can get underlooked
yeah,
and missed. When you like the actors that kept showing up too, you're just like, yeah, goddamn.
that's right. Yeah, no, it's an incredible cast, and everybody really, really delivers. Even their own perspective of fear towards Jesse, like they all look at him in a little bit of a different way, and it's kind of like a group of kids looking up to their dad or a coach or something.
Well, it's like a Peter Pan situation with the gang. Yeah, that part is interesting too because the gang situation. Because you don't think about the gang when you think about him, but you're like, oh yeah, you couldn't just do this by yourself. They get you. You need a crew. Also, if you're just kind of doing this by yourself, like no one knows who you are after a while. You're just this weird dude that just kind of, you're a drifter that kills people and gets what he wants, and then eventually someone will get you back. I think what you said was interesting. They all have a different relationship with him, and what they want from him is different. And the fame aspect of it, to me, is what's more interesting than the criminal aspect. That's why most of them are there, is there's like a charisma and a fame and excitement because they could just be doing the criminal shit anywhere.
There's a
You
desire
know,
to be there.
I
Yeah.
mean, we're the Rolling Stones, man. You know what I mean?
Well, and
So,
how much of that dynamic is do you think, especially as a professional performer, is that an analogy for what it's like to kind of be a young performer? Robert Ford comes up reading these books, he idolizes Jesse. He wants to get into the business. He kind of is just happy to do what he has to do and doesn't really mind twisting his morals and breaking some laws. I mean, breaking a lot of laws, but for the sake of the analogy, and I feel like the way it plays out and how it ends with his attempt to get fame and how the audience in the movie kind of eventually resents him. I don't know, feels like it's an analogy for unfortunately the path a lot of performers go down.
Not even performers. Because I chased a wild dream before I started doing stand up. It was like I thought I was going to be a professional baseball player. I think when I watched it, there's that part of being like, he got mad at what it was. I understand that emotion. I do. I think that helped me because of what I saw, like high level sports and baseball was, what it like really was. And it was a bummer. I couldn't articulate it then. I think I can now in a way, but it was like, and I was mad at baseball for a little bit. Like,
Sure.
like couldn't watch it really. Didn't even process why. You know what I mean? Just like, nope,
Just walked away. Yeah.
just can't do that right now. Play a little softball, dominate. Uh, dominate so much where I was like, this is dangerous. I don't need to be doing this anymore. I think that lent itself, like understanding our perception and what our delusions and what we want it to be, what we want these things to be, and what they are. As you can see, some people handle that differently. And I don't know. And then to me, it does, because when you're young, it feels like disappointment, and that's a bummer. You don't want to. And as a parent, you're constantly trying to, show them new things, and then like that is one of the tougher things about getting older is like things aren't new anymore. So people have a hard time with that, which is not true. You just have to go do new stuff. People are dumb. Anyway, but that young energy,
Mm-hmm.
and then mixed with also ego, which is like, I want to be the same thing. And then it is an interesting cocktail of when all those things are being cooked, what can happen.
That is such a interesting part of the human experience, loving something and being passionate about something and then chasing a dream. And it's so easy to just label something as black and white. Someone failed or they succeeded, they could or they couldn't do it. But a lot of people, just similar to your experience, they realize this isn't what I thought it was. And it can be really frustrating and it can be really upsetting because, again, it's for a lot of people what they build their identity around, or at least for a portion of their life. So, yeah, that's really impactful. And I think this movie does a really good job of articulating that. So
That identity, like people have a hard time when their sense of identity gets crushed. And you're like, fuck. But I was this, and this was like, and you're like, yeah, I know, I've been there. It is a bummer and a half. But what's interesting is like Jesse was trapped in it. So there's like I saw parallels to like Hunter S. Thompson, in that he was trapped in a lot of like this like character he created. I think he's a great spirit animal. I don't think he's a great hero. And I think people miss that dude a lot, like miss the point of him a lot. The world's pretty simple when you break it down. So you can make a lot of metaphors, especially as a Southern person. An analogy. Hunter S. My favorite book is Hell's Angels because he goes in wanting those motherfuckers to be so cool and awesome, and they're in like what they stand for, and it does sound cool and awesome. And then he had to fucking reckon with who they actually were and what they actually stood for, and they beat the fuck out of him when he called him out for it too.
Yeah.
I mean, the other ones, he's an incredible writer. Don't get me wrong, the other novels were fucking amazing, but that one was the most powerful to me as a human being because he had to be like, son of a, they suck. And we've all had to do that. We've all had this perception of what this is, what this is, what this is. And then some people don't react well and some people stay in it. But I also there is a very human element to Jesse James that he brings there. And I think Brad Pitt understands it because he's also Brad Pitt. And that there's this myth that does bring you a certain lifestyle that is nice. And then there's the human and the person, and if you don't know where that line is, it's haunting.
And that human has to deal with the repercussions of that character, the myth. Well, let me get a score for characters and performances out of you. 1 out of 10. What would you give the characters? I'm going to assume
I would say 9.
Marks. Yeah.
9. I mean, it's when you're watching it, because of what I do, I think there's a couple times where I pull myself out where I was like, fuck. Even that was because I was already in watching, and you're like, oh, these guys are real, because I don't see them act, and I
Right.
see a lot of motherfuckers acting now. That
Oh,
once you
yeah.
start studying it or trying to do it, and I'm not saying I'm good at it, I'm just saying once you study stuff, you start seeing stuff,
Oh, yeah.
and that is the testament. Is when you're watching something, you're like, oh, they're good, they're really good, because I'm just sitting here watching. Yeah, these are famous people too that you're watching. You're like, I forgot that's dipshit. That is
And yeah, a whole
Mary Louise Parker. She's, yeah, I
what am
love
I?
her. I love her.
Well, that brings us to visual storytelling. We mentioned
I
earlier.
don't know her. She could be a nightmare, but I love the lady she plays in Weeds, and a lot of her characters I really like. I love her
Parker.
work, is what I should say.
Let us
Someone
know if
like,
she's
you
a
know, she
good or-
stabs puppies. You're like, I mean, maybe, I don't know. But when she's on the screen, I have a kind of a crush on her.
Well, I appreciate the sentiments and align with them. Let us know again in the comments if your dog was attacked by Mary Louise Parker.
Yes, please.
The cinematographer I mentioned earlier is the great Roger Deakins, who also did No Country for Old Men, which also came out this year. Kind of unbelievable.
I mean, he didn't film them all. You know what I mean? That's not
Oh,
how it
absolutely.
works.
Yeah, yeah. It's not like he
But
was
it does,
yeah,
like, if
pulling
you're not
double.
versed in that, it does sound just like, how in the fuck? That's exhausting. Masterpieces in 1 year, and I'm tired.
Yeah, he just rode horses from set to set, and with a camera on his back.
What movie? It doesn't matter. There's some dude on a horse. And look how pretty and wide it is. You're like, yep, he did it. You know that.
Well, he was definitely cooking, and this. But what's interesting is because we're talking about these other movies, No Country for Old Men. We're talking about the assassination of Jesse James. They all have distinctly different styles while still being westerns and taking place at various time frames, but same landscapes and things. And this movie has this sort of what I would call almost this like overcast to it, this sort of like bluish kind of, I don't know, it's hard for me to think of a scene where there's ever just a sunny day or direct sunlight, and everything is muted and soft sort of light.
Melancholy.
Yeah, melancholy.
Well,
And
that's what it is. Everything, if you're on the constant run, that's how I felt in that fucking cave. Is like you're not like uncomfortable, in peril. And so I can relate to this. Here's the Southern person. Like I traveled most of my adult life. That's what the stand-up comedian does. There were certain points where, like, after my divorce, I lived on the road, which sounds like you're homeless, and you kind of are, but you're not really. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's like probably a couple days you're like, technically, yeah, I was like, I lived in this rental car, kind of. You know what I mean? Where it's just like,
right, you're just in transit so much.
but by the end of that experience, I think it's just a testament to, like, that dude's a genius, because it is one of those when people have those discussions about movies and stuff, and they're like, well, they can just put a so and so and put them in there and they can do it. And you're like, I wish it was
Right.
but you got to understand, like, they put up with a lot of like shenanigans from these people because they're insanely talented at this, like, in this crazy thing. And it is like, when you think of like when you hear the word, oh, he's like a good cinematographer, director of photography, and how hard can that be? And you're like, it's surprisingly,
it's a lot more than framing up a shot.
yes, the way that man can make the camera move and then light a real space, that's insane.
If you'll indulge me, in one of our earlier episodes, we were talking Arrival, and we bring up something called the cool shot effect, which is taught in a lot of film schools. And it's basically the idea is you can just kind of juxtapose various images, and the audience will inject psychology. They will decide, oh, if you put a bowl of soup and a man next to it, they're going to assume the man is hungry. But good cinematography is the opposite of that. And that's what we're talking about. It's not just about creating beautiful images, which is difficult. It's not just about creating beautiful images where things can move around in it. But it's also about creating beautiful images that can then be put next to each other sequentially for 2 hours and 40 minutes and consistently hold a pace that doesn't deviate. All of that pacing is a marriage between edit and the footage they capture, which I think is what the cinematography truly is. It's that marriage between those things.
We were like, oh, this is awesome. And it's like, and I'm going to promote my last special,
Please.
Testify.
The link is in the description, by the way.
Please watch it. I wrapped this weird, trippy art thing. I wrapped a stand-up special in a trippy art DMT thing. And it's because of my director, John Diaz. His brain is better than mine, but it works like mine. And he was like, hey, could we do this, this, and this? And I was like, sure, yeah. Do you know? And he was like, yeah, I know how to do this, this. And I was like, he knew how to do these things that I was trying to convey. And there were a couple things where I was like, I mean, this makes me pretty vulnerable. But at first I was like, no. And then I was like, oh, well, that's what we're doing here. And that makes me, okay. When you watch something as good as this fucking movie is, it just frustrates me when you see something that's great and you're like, I just think we're really caught up in the wrong shit so much.
Yeah.
Not even to make this political, just more like from an art standpoint, we're just like, it's what makes it special too.
No, that's true.
Because you work on a lot of garbage, and not necessarily garbage, but
stuff
things
that isn't made with the same intention. I mean, you touched on it. I mean, there's always a mountain to climb anytime there's a production. But yeah, I think this movie, the people behind it wanted to make sure it was made, and it comes through. There's a passion, and
Quincy Jones talks about he's like, sometimes God's in the room, in the studio when things are being made, and sometimes it's not. He's not even in there. It's like he's not even on the. And I was like, I know what he means, and that's what this feels like. It's also cool to see power fucking actors who can command the whole screen anytime they want, being like, I want to be in this ensemble acting with that motherfucker who may be the only motherfucker who can make me disappear on camera. There's some of that where you watch some of that where you're like, oh, whoa, that's cool. Because I think Sam Rockwell may be pound for pound the best actor of.
Sure.
They do that thing. You've like this generation of, however they measure
that ranking. Yeah.
Him and Gary Oldman, to me, go and do things where I'm just like,
right. Who saw that coming? Yeah.
What the fuck? It's like the only other person that can kind of do that is like Denzel.
Sure.
As the lead, he can do different stuff where you're just like, that's fucking amazing. Brad Pitt is also, but I think Sam Rockwell, like what he
can hit every note and in different ways. He
can embody, like his body looks different.
He acts with every part of himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure off screen is like the tough talent to manage. It's like some of those musicians that do heroin that are really good. It's like, I wish you wouldn't, but I'm
at the same time,
grateful that you do.
Visual storytelling, 1 out of 10. What
10.
would you give?
10. Well, let's do 9.
Oh, okay. 9.5? We can throw a 0.5?
Yeah, let's do 9.5. Because there's I guess visual 10. No, I'll go 10.
Going back to 10. I watch a lot of movies here on the show. I've watched a lot of stand-up comedy specials. We're going to do an episode later in the season all about comedy specials. I have seen your special, and I don't mind saying, I wouldn't say this just because you're here. It is really, really great. The link is in the description of this episode, but everybody really should check it out. It's one of the better specials I've seen, especially in recent years, because it is really inventive and it's out there and it's funny and it's different from any comedy special you're going to see. So
we thought we would do something weird because it's different and that's what people wanted, and we were very wrong about that. It is if you stick through the weird part, there is a wonderful stand-up special in the middle of the weird stuff.
It's so funny. But even when you say weird,
it's not that weird, but it is
good weird. It's
but
different.
You and I aren't.
True.
Our brains aren't 9 to 5. And I'm not saying that in a detrimental, no judgment of anyone else's brain. But yes, I'm very proud of it. The people that do find it and that they do love it. And I think this fits. I also understand. I have to tell my ego that sometimes it's like, we're not for everyone.
Right.
Come on, I like it. You know what I mean? Where you're just like, but they're also like, you're also challenging people a little bit too the whole time. I'm like, yes, people don't like that. I don't get it.
A lot of people go to comedy like they go to a vending machine. They want some junk food. So when you throw something healthy in there, sometimes they don't always like it, but that doesn't mean you can't have a delicious
I
healthy
just
snack.
spice it so good that you don't even know it's healthy.
Exactly.
That's kind of what I'm trying to do. Like, now I used to not spice it as well, and sometimes right, I think he's yelling at us right now.
Yeah.
Like I am yelling at you guys. But now I've been cooking long enough. I know how to be like, is this? I'm like, it's good for you too. And you're like, no shit. I'm like, I know. I can't believe it.
No, I can testify that
I'm like sweet potatoes. How about that?
is great.
Sweet potatoes are great for you, and the whole time you're like, these can't be good for you.
Speaking of sweet potatoes, that brings us to use of sound on the assassination Jesse James by the cow Robert Ford. Very interesting choice. I mentioned in my open, it's kind of like a lullaby that sort of plays throughout. It's very methodical.
Melancholy.
Yeah, it's melancholy. Absolutely.
Yes. It's the whole time you're just like, fuck.
It's
Even
just
when things are good, you're like, it's gonna not be good. And you're like, yeah, because all the stuff the reason there is a metaphor and the music does a great job of like, if you don't deal with the things, they're
Sure.
gonna be there.
It's always just kind of it's like a shadow, the music in this movie.
It's like a symphony
Yeah.
because there's a lot of working parts rocking together, which is like, come on. You ever had a group dynamic? It's insane.
You kidding me? You ever try to get more than three people to decide what they want to have for lunch, let
It
alone
is
score a film? Yeah.
fucking nightmare to be. Hey, you all want to do the thing we want to do? And everybody's like, yeah. I'm like, how about we do this? Nope. God damn it.
I am literally the mascot for a production company, so yeah, preach, brother. Well, is that a 10 then for use of sound? Would that be? I mean, it sounds like a pretty
9 because of like I said, there was like a couple times where I was like, huh. But if I rewatch it, I'm probably gonna be like, I know why they did that. I wasn't paying attention to that. So I'll give it a 10. This movie's one of those where, like I said in the beginning, I wasn't ready for how good it was when I put it on years ago. You want it to be taken. You know what I mean? Where it's like you can go into the kitchen and get some queso and then come back and you're like, what happened? You're like, it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah. You don't have to pause for a bathroom
Still
break.
trying to find that lady. Oh, this is like a daytime movie. Okay. All right.
You got to lock in. Yeah, this is one of those movies. If you walk in the room and someone's watching it, if you sit down, you're probably not getting up for the rest of the movie. It's gonna hook you. That brings us to our last category of themes, Mr. Billy Wayne Davis. This movie, we've already touched on the themes quite a bit. But for me, envy, mentor, idolization, that's the word I'm looking for. Idolizing someone and the dangers and of obsession and exploring that. I don't know. What were your thoughts on the theme?
Well, he says that line early on. I remember him saying the line and being like, that's a good line. But like I didn't think about how profound it was until you. But that line of like you trying to be me or be like me. Like that is like as a stand-up, I understand that too.
Sure.
Which is like sometimes young comics will come to you and be like, you like this? And you're like, you're just doing me. Which is like flattering. It is a goddamn ball of different emotions when that happens. Because you're like, I see what you're doing, and you have the same disease I have. You have the same ailment. So I want to help with that, but don't do my shit. But you do have to learn like how to do it, and the only way to learn how to do is like watch other people and then just kind of practice. So you don't want to be like, hey, that's mine. Stop it.
Right.
And they're like, whoa, he was like, my hero's like mad at me because then they'll kill you. You know what I mean? I'm not as mentally ill as Jesse James. So
luckily for all of us, including
thank God.
Yeah.
But it is like this mix of flattering and then confusing too, because you're just like, be yourself.
Yeah, you want to nurture the passion, but you want them to blaze their own trail and also not bite your style and step on
not steal your shit.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, and I think it was Francis Ford Coppola who said, the best way to learn how to make movies is just remake other people's movies, which I think he means more from a student standpoint than necessarily from a filmmaker standpoint. I do think there's a lot of value in that, especially from the technical side of things, because a lot of people, I mean, I'm in comedy, you're inspired by work and you kind of reverse engineer it. And so you're
Well,
sort
like
of
that's why the road's so important, and that's why social media fucks it up sometimes. It's like, stop putting it all up. The road's important because you're out there in front of just a live audience, figuring it out, failing.
getting your reps in. Yeah.
Oh, I tried this new joke. Okay, blah, blah. Then someone sees it and like, hey, that's so and so's joke. You're like, oh, fuck, is it? Yeah, I don't think you stole it, but they've already made it, and like, so don't put like all that. And it's like, I think that's what Coppola's saying too, is like,
Right.
yeah, that's how you go put in the reps and the practice. And you're like, okay. And what he's saying, and it's the same thing that fucking hacks and thieves love to take that Picasso thing is like, no, they don't. What they do is they learn everyone's different styles and they learn these different processes and they learn these different fundamentals. And when you learn all these fundamentals, then you know how to twist them all
Mm-hmm.
to make it yours.
You know enough technique. There's another quote that I don't know who said it, but style are the mistakes the artist chooses to make, and it comes
Yes.
after you have such a technical proficiency. You will let loose in certain areas because that's where you're sort of expressing yourself uniquely. And yeah, if you're uneducated, especially given a particular medium, and you zoom out, it's so easy to just see different artists work is overlapping or various things, but it's and it's obviously impossible to maybe ever know the true intention of an artist. But if you study the craft of any medium, you will start to see who stands out with those technical proficiencies, and that's the difference between the snakes or the sort of liars, so to speak, or kind of the people who are pretending to be something as opposed to just operating
Well,
freely within the medium.
there are those people that are like, wow, what you're doing is amazing. And I could never do that in a million years. But there's some like true geniuses that when people watch it, they leave going, I can do that. I want to do that.
Right. They make it look
I can
easy.
do that.
Yeah.
Nate Bargatze's a friend of mine, and I've always laughed because people are like, he's just talking up there. I'm like, she sure is. That's all he's doing, you fuckheads.
Right. Just words. Yeah.
He's just saying words, and yeah. Mm-hmm. He's doing a spell, is what he's fucking doing.
Yeah.
He's a goddamn genius.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, I do got to get a score up for the theme out of you.
That's interesting because it's a true fucking story. And most of it, if you look into it, there's not a whole lot of like dramatic license taken. Most of it is like fairly accurate. Sometimes real life is just like, whoa, this is like right on the money. And like these themes are like, it's like if Shakespeare was like, here, just go to Missouri. Just go to Missouri. Here, we're gonna write this. Just we'll follow these three characters around.
Go to this cave.
And he was like, whoa. And you're like, yeah, you don't even have to write. You just kind of have to like report. Movies usually have to take that slight detour that drives some people crazy when they're like, well, that's not how it really happened. You're like, yeah, but we're doing a 90-minute thing here, and it's a good.
Yeah, this is entertainment.
And if you do it the way it really happened, people, they don't like that. They don't. It's like they need a little, there's relaxing. That's usually where you have to like, do the dramatic, like, but to make it fit into a theme or like these simple things, these like the pacing or like even like the story structure even. But
Sure.
this is like, I see why they're like I said, like I'd only shave like 15 minutes off because I think that's just, I see why, like I said, that I see why it's over 2 hours because it's like, you want to put all this shit in there because you're like, this really fucking happened.
It's good, interesting stuff. Yeah.
Yes, it's crazy. And then you got all these actors nailing it, and you're like, yeah, and we get this dude to do and then and then and you're like, yeah, totally. Yeah, I bet everyone showed up and they're like, this is crazy. I keep waiting for something bad to happen. You're like, this is the best experience of all our lives.
We're all just cool and successful and the best at what we do, and we have this amazing script and this great.
We're gonna love this movie. This is amazing. And then people were like, how'd it go? No one heard about it.
It turns out the guy who shot our movie shot like 19 of these in the same year. So
yeah. And they're all this good.
Yeah,
actually, 2 of them are better, if you can believe it.
Well, all that said, is that a 9 then? Maybe a 10 for theme? Or is it lower marks because it's just kind of baked in? I'm not
I
sure.
think it's 10 because
Yeah,
they nail it. That's another part of it when you think about it. Like, you're like, they could have fumbled this pretty bad. They nail it.
every part of it too. From the performances to the script to the sound design, every aspect of it really is just phenomenal. And well, you've got all your points locked in then, Billy. I'm gonna read them back to you to give you your final score. You gave the plot an 8, the characters and performances a 9, the visual storytelling a 10, the use of sound a 9, and the theme a 10, which is a total of 92. So is that an A plus? Do you want to throw a plus
I
up?
would do A plus. I would give this movie an A plus.
I completely agree. To your 8, I gave the plot a 9. I gave it a little bit better. I gave the characters and performances a 10 to your 9 because I think so much of what we talked about, I just for me, 10 out of 10. Visual storytelling, I gave it a 10 to your 10. Use of sound, I gave it 10 to your 9. We weren't really that far off. And theme, I gave a 9.5 to your 10. So we were really super close. I gave it a 97 to your 92, also an A plus.
It's awesome.
It's a great, great movie.
I told my wife, she's like, "What are you?" I was like, "I have to watch that." And she was in, like, she worked for Focus and all this other, she's in the business or whatever. And she was like, "Oh, that movie's so good." And I was like, "Oh, okay, all right." And I was watching. I was like, "Yeah, she knows that shit. She knows
She's a real one.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah." Whereas it's like she knows good shit, and she watches just garbage TV.
Which is somehow what's happened in modern culture. I feel like all of my smartest, funniest, most capable friends just watch nothing but horrible reality television. And
They do great work. She
yeah,
does an amazing work. But
yeah,
what
that's what I'm
she
saying.
consumes, sometimes I'm like, this is physical Skittles in your eyeballs. That's better than what you're doing.
That's right. Well, let us know in the comments your favorite reality TV show that we'll have to check out. But Billy, I'm so
And I
glad.
will say sometimes I do sit down and watch while they're fighting. I am curious why they're yelling at each other. That part that I do understand what gets people because I'm like, why are they that mad? I used to use the reoccurring line like when we were doing something, we get done with some dumb thing that we just filmed or something. And I was like, this is on the Learning Channel, you guys. The Learning Channel. And then the head of the production company was coming one day and they're like, hey, you can't do that joke today. I was like, it's so funny. They're like, yeah, he just doesn't, we can't have fun today. He was like, we just can't do fun. I was like, all right, I won't be fun.
Well, this was a very fun day, and all because you came to the Jungle, Billy. Thank you so much for being here. I'd love to have you come back sometime if you're touring and you're nearby the Jungle. Come through. We could talk about another flick. And
Yes. Yes.
listeners should go to bwdtour.com,
Yes.
and you can see where and when Billy's coming near you. For this Lion's Money, I think you're the best comic anyone can go see right now on the road. I got to see you earlier this year in Brooklyn, and it was an awesome show. So go check out Billy whenever he comes near you. And again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Bob. I'll see you soon.
All right, later,
I
brother.
love you guys.
Thanks for listening, and here's a look at the scoreboard from our show. Joe Belcastro graded 310 to Yuma, a 77 and a B+, to my 82 and a C with a 79.5 B+ average. Jimmy scored No Country for Old Men a 94 and A, where I gave it a 99 and A+, with a 96.5 A+ average, earning it the top spot on today's show. Finally, The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford scored 92% and an A+ from Billy Wayne Davis, and a 97 and A+ from me with a 94.5 A+ average. I would love to know your scores, so please let me know what you graded each film in the comments. I want to thank Joe Belcastro, whose work is available at joebelcastro.com. You can support Jimmy the Toucan by letting him know your thoughts in the comments, and go to Hulu right now to watch Testify, starring Billy Wayne Davis. Join us next time on episode 8 when we look at Greta Gerwig's work.
One of my best friends, Jessica Collins, scores Lady Bird, Lila the Sugar Glider talks Little Women, and Real Digital's go-to cinematographer, Jeremy McDaniel, talks Barbie. Thanks to the team at Real Digital for producing this episode and Platinum Plastic, who supplies our show's merchandise on redbubble.com. If you haven't left a like by now, it might be time because you're running out, and subscribe to the channel as well as hit the bell icon to be notified when Real Talk drops twice a week. Thanks for listening, and if you're going to talk movies, make sure it's Real Talk.
What's the most you ever lost in a coin toss? Sir? The most you ever lost in a coin toss.